Welcome to the Masters of Materium, where we're going over every single deed and potential building layouts and admiring Aaelim's incredible work, where he literally recreated the deeds on a potential building plot options inside of a game called Valheim. If you haven't watched our previous videos on the homestead, outpost, and farming hamlet, make sure you check those out. Grill, let's get right into it.
Absolutely. Here is the Ranching Hamlet.
So as we mentioned on previous videos, if you haven't seen them, starting on the left-hand side, we have the RPG Maker plot maps. And something I hadn't mentioned before, I specifically made those plot maps with the intention of making the Valheim maps after. And they're exactly the same in terms of the amount of spaces. So not alone do they, appealing from a visual and aesthetic standpoint, but that was a key thing to actually helping create some of these Valheim deeds. So we have a ranching hamlet here, and on the right-hand side, you can see the overhead view of the plot map that we're looking at. Now, this particular layout for a ranching hamlet is something that I would likely actually run, and I think it's about as close to optimal as you can expect from the average person. I would probably potentially change maybe a butchery or a dairy for a tannery, but other than that, it's pretty optimal. Another thing interesting is the farming plots, and my personal thought is that the number of farming plots is probably consistent with what they would expect is required to actually feed your animals, which is more or less a 3-to-1 ratio. Ranching plots to farming plots. Again, you have the 10 by 20 ranching house in the center, and you have 2 entrances, which is not quite as accessible as the farming hamlets, but it should be noted that this deed is actually quite wide. So you'll see once we actually get into the deed, but a very, very large and spacious deed. Again, you have the hitching post, which I would expect most people would run, a grain stand to try to mill up the feed for the animals. Milking stand, again, is obviously for milking cows and sheep and stuff in the game. Storehouse and a simple granary, which I would expect are pretty much staples of a ranching hamlet.
That's great. That's a very interesting point about having to feed the animals. I had not thought about that.
Let's take a quick look at the house here.
So the ranching house itself is I like the look of it. The problem with it, it's a 10 by 20, so it's only 10 meters wide, and the awnings take up a lot of that space, making the interior very small. So you'll see once we have a good look inside in like the video and stuff, but it makes the interior not nearly as spacious or kind of luxurious as you would have seen from the farming hamlet's home, but still a very nice home and just as practical in terms of functionality as the equivalent of the farming hamlet.
Okay, take a look at some of the construction pictures as we built it up. This next one is like really impressive.
The very first deed I made was the center one. The center one is the town of the Duke, which we'll get into much later. You can see in the very top right, that's the actual homestead up there, which is, as you can see, is quite tiny compared to some of these other deeds. On the far right side is the farming hamlet, and as you can see where the camp was, and that is closest to the town of the Duke. And that's only because based on the layout I have for the town of the Duke, there was no camp. And then these are all continuous with easy access directly into the ranching hamlet, which is on the far left side. And you'll see some additional images here of kind of taking as the farming hamlet was being built. And this was done with the anticipation of having a video series. Some of the earlier deeds, I didn't have kind of construction images, but I very much like these stone layouts. It kind of gives an idea of the overall space and kind of gives a different, almost like a different view of a plot map without things specifically labeled, just to kind of see layouts. This one here is partially built up. Some of the 10 by 10s aren't, completed. The dairy looks like it's partially completed. all the actual ranching is completed here with the, we'll say in this game it's called locks, but my intent would be, you know, cows and such. You also have some non-typical farming animals which they're raising there. For those are wolves, which you could potentially get for working from a tannery. You have the pigs, and you also have some chickens. Here's another view with the same thing, but in this case, the barn and the butchery have been completed. And as you can see, with all the smoke coming, all these deeds are functional in that way as well, where you have to concern yourself with ventilation. So it is not just for aesthetics. A lot of the stuff that's being done here is also to, you know, improve functionality as much as possible. And this is the same thing from the other side. Well, 10 farming plots is significant. You know, that's 2.5 times what you see on the outpost and 10 times as much potential as you would have got from a homestead on a deed that's not even really designed for farming, because it's substantially designed for ranching. And another thing I should mention in terms of ranching, this is the only deed that has any substantial ranching. The next largest deed would be like the village of the farmer and or archduke, both which have some ranching plots. But this is going to be a very unique deed, and it's something that the M.O.M Guild has a substantial dominance in.
Yeah, as of this recording, we have 36% of the ranching hamlets. So if you own a ranching hamlet, reach out, go to mastersofmaterium.com, join us, and help us take over beef production and meat inside of Mirandus, because we will be dominating all of the ranching plots in the game as much as we can.
It's got a couple more slides here. A little up close with the buildings.
The barn of some chickens and some pigs and stuff. The actual specific function of barn is kind of unknown. My guess it'll be for, you know, storing farm related or ranching related things, and potentially for breeding ranching animals and such would be my guess, but that's complete speculation on my part there.
When cow NFT sale?
Hopefully never, but
Yes,
you know it's
please.
coming, right?
Yes, please.
Can we edit that out, please? And that's it. This is the last shot here. This is another shot of buildings kind of looking down the main road of the ranch.
Yeah, so you can see the ranch is a long deed, and this is actually relatively close to the center of the deed. So you can see just, you know, how big this deed actually is.
You can't even see the far side of it.
Yeah, you can't, it doesn't even load in, literally. And we're, like I said, we're looking from the center, kind of the center area. You still have all the ranching plots and the other building behind us from here. So
Yeah, no, I think once people actually get in here and take a look around, they're going to be completely blown away.
also, anyone who's watching should be aware that these deeds are all exactly the scale of what you're seeing in Mirandus. All the buildings, all the deeds, all the plots. This will be what it feels like actually in the deeds, with, you know, as accurate as possible.
I'll cue up the video here. Let Aaelim take it away.
I did a lot of these videos at night just because I really love the lighting, and I also like to see the comparison between how dark it is in Mirandus at night and how you can expect a lot of these deeds to play out. Like something like a ranching hamlet, you wouldn't expect to have a whole lot of light. This here is a lox, like I said, would be kind of the equivalent of like a cow. You know, the lox loves me, so that's, you know, that's a good sign here.
So really
Going through. That's one of the, forget about all the ranching. It's just as long as the animals love you. Gonna just have a look around here. You got a bunch of chickens doing, you know, chicken kind of things. You got the milking stand ready to pump out that milk, get those dairies working hard. Simple storehouse, looks pretty quiet right now. The simple granary, who knows what's inside of a simple granary. You got the butchery grill there, chopping on the butcher's block, cooking there. I think the food is looking a little on the burnt side there, girl, but
I like it well done, okay?
well done. Yeah. Virtual is doing some interesting things with the animals in here. I'm not going to comment specifically what he is doing, but
I'm a creature lover, man. I'm a creature lover. What can I say?
It looks like if we have a skeleton sneaking up on Van from behind with the bow. Here's the dairy, and you can see they're making ice cream, and you can, you know, bring the cows directly in there to milk them. And then we have the actual ranching home. Now, as I mentioned before, it's very narrow. And this is something you noticed as well with the outpost home, where you can't really mobilize around nearly as good as, say, some of the other ones, the farming. And I switch it to day here. I'm using dev commands on this, and you can kind of see what it looks like during the day. And this is a big deed. You can see virtual down there with the fiery sword running in, and there's a significant time just to run from one building to another. So some of these deeds are large. Like, to compare, the Archduke takes you over 5 minutes of real time to scale to run around, and your movement speed in Valheim is far faster than your movement speed in Mirandus. So these deeds are really, really large.
Yeah, after moving around these deeds, I definitely have embraced the necessity of a horse. I mean, I already own a few horses, but you're going to need a horse, in my opinion, to move around. It's going to be too slow otherwise. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Make sure you join us, mastersofmaterium.com. Again, ranching is our top domination so far. We own over 33% of all the ranching plots inside of Mirandus. So if you have any type of ranching deeds or ranching plots on your deeds, make sure you join us. Hit the Discord, and that's, again, we're very simple and easy to join. All you got to do is send your wallet to Aaelim, and that's it. Mastersofmaterium.com. Thanks for watching.